What's up, everybody? It is Ross, and welcome to the 1% Daily Podcast. I've got to stop doing this with my hands. My wife told me yesterday. How are we doing, everybody? The 1% Daily Podcast, 14 minutes and 40 seconds of myself sharing with you the stuff that I learned, that I've learned, that I share with my clients, that I've read about, that I've just kind of gathered through my experiences. Hopefully, it will help you during this podcast. So what's it all about? 1% of your day is just 14 minutes and 40 seconds. So this podcast is going to go for 14 minutes and 40 seconds. And if I'm bambling on at the end, I will just cut it off. Episode 41 we're on today. And today it's all about why it's important to be constantly learning. And by learning, I mean just constantly trying to improve in different areas of your life. So this comes from conversations I've had in the last kind of like week, 10 days, working with new clients, working with different groups of people. And they've really been enjoying the 1% concept. And some of the stuff I've heard them talking about and referring it to their lives has been really interesting. So 1% for me is just finding some time in your day to pick an area of your life to improve on. But if we take it right back to forget the 1% and we just start to think about why it's important to be learning. I talk about, and I've shared this, and it's all over the internet, so it's not me, I've not invented this at all, but if you're not working on yourself or working on some area of your life, you're effectively going backwards in that area. And what I mean by that is the world around us is always improving and is always developing and is always sort of moving forward. It's evolving. It's just the way that life is. So tech gets better. People read information. Science gets better. All the good stuff around us gets better. Now, if we're choosing not to be a part of that and not actively learning or working on ourselves, we are effectively going backwards because everything around us is evolving and moving forwards. So therefore, we are going backwards if we choose not to be involved in the conversation. So that's what it's really about. And I mean, with what I've done in the past and what I do on the 1% Daily Podcast is I always just talk about what's going on in my life and what I'm aware of. And I always talk about the big six. So the big six for me is health and fitness, psychological well-being, career, wealth, family, and then yourself. So self-actualization, self-awareness. Those are the 6 areas. Now, if you're not choosing to actively work on any of those areas, you're essentially moving backwards. So what will happen is in your daily life, in what you're doing, whether it's at work, at home, relationships, you will be having good conversations every now and again. But if you're really sort of dropped the ball massively in one of those areas, you need to then set aside some time to work on that area. So, for example, I was talking to a client of mine, we were talking about relationships, and they were like, I don't need to work on my relationship with my wife, it's fine. And I was like, well, the misconception people have is if we've got to work on something, it means it's broken. Now that's not what it's about at all. So this person was having a really hard time because they thought their relationship was broken, and I was suggesting they go and speak to a counsellor or speak to somebody else who give them some more advice. And they got really sort of cagey about it. And I was like, look, that doesn't mean that your relationship's broken. It just means you want to improve it. A really good example of this that I saw, a guy called Casey Neistat on YouTube. Check him out. It's brilliant. Him and his wife do a marriage podcast, but they also actively talk about going to a marriage counsellor. Now, that's just because they've got to deal with their stuff. That's brilliant. I think that's really, really powerful that they can not admit, but be proactive enough to go, I want this relationship to be better. So if you want to improve in any area of your life, you've got to then say, right, I'm going to dedicate some time. And that's where the 1% podcast comes in, the 1% Daily Podcast. If you can just find 14 minutes and 40 seconds every day just to work on something, it's going to do massive for you. So over the weekend, I was doing some work with the British shooting team. So I was doing some work with their coaches, and we were talking about the 1% concept and 14 minutes and 40 seconds and how if themselves or their athletes had actually dedicated 14 minutes and 40 seconds every day, so just 1% of their day, to some specific skill or some exercise or some methodology or something based around their shooting, it could really significantly be the difference between hitting the target and missing the target. One of the guys talked about just 14 minutes and 40 seconds working on your core. So I wasn't just stroking myself then. Working on your core every day would add up massively to be able to hold a certain shooting position. I then was speaking to a lecturer yesterday about some work that I'm going to potentially do at a university, and 14 minutes and 40 seconds every day. She literally said that could be the difference between people graduating and not graduating, but then also getting a 2-1 or a first or a 2-1 or a 2-2, whatever it might be. But actually that could be the difference, just taking 1% of their day to actively work on themselves and look to improve themselves. Now, 1% for everybody can look differently, okay? 1% of your day is always going to be 14 minutes and 40 seconds, but what you do with that time can be very different. So you might spend it meditating, you might spend it reading books, you might spend it listening to books, you might spend it listening to this podcast, you might spend it watching videos. There's lots of different ways you can consume information. Conversations are brilliant, actively taking time out to go and sit with people who are either A, doing what you want to do, B, are sort of in the areas that you want to be in, successful like you want to be successful. Hang out with these people, have conversations with them. But these things don't happen by chance. You've got to sort of arrange them in advance. So at this shared working space, we always try and sit and have lunch together. We have working lunches. We have like activity-based lunches where we just sit and talk about cool topics. We also talk about the bigger stuff, the 6 dimensions, like I said, health and fitness, psychological well-being, career, wealth, family, and yourself. We will talk about these areas, and then you go away having learnt from that experience. Now, it's really easy not to do this. So people will go, oh yeah, I kind of cover that, or I'm not really sure what that means, or maybe I'll do this, maybe I'll do that. It's not easy, but as humans, we are creatures of habit, creatures of routine. So in order for you to find your 1%, you need to be prepared to mark it down in your book, in your journal. And I always talk about having a journal. This is my planning journal, okay? I have another journal that I write in the morning. Now for me, I try and find my 1% in the morning. And my 1% actually turns into probably 2 or 3 or 4% of my day. I have what I call an hour of power in the morning. And that's basically, I get up early, I have lemon and water, I then meditate for 10 minutes, I then journal, I then plan, and then I read. So it becomes almost an hour's worth of something. But if you can't find an hour, can you find 1% to start your day? And this is what I did with the athletes at the weekend. And if you don't take control of the start of your day, somebody else will take control of it for you. So whether it's you turning up to work or going to do something for somebody else somewhere else, you're giving up the start of your day to something else. So you need to be taking control of it and use that time in the morning to be working on yourself. Now, you might sit there now or be listening to this in the car or go, I don't know where to start. There's too much to think about. Like I said, there's those 6 areas in life. You'll know an area that you need to knuckle down on. Now, the top 3 that always come out when I work with clients and work with groups of people, health and fitness always is at the top of the list. Family is always up there as well. And then usually either psychological well-being or career, they're usually around the top 3. So pick one of those. Now, the great thing about those 3 or 4 that I've just mentioned, the big 3 for me is health and fitness, psychological well-being, and family. You work on those areas. The other 3, you'll benefit from them anyway. So let me just demonstrate what I mean by that. If you start to work on your health and fitness and you are exercising regularly, you're in a better mood. I know for myself, if I'm exercising regularly, I'm in a better mood. I've got better patience. I've got more clarity around me. I'm able to have better conversations. And I mean I'm able to have better conversations with my wife. So Sarah and I, we communicate better when we've both been able to exercise, because exercise is very important to us. So because I've exercised, my wife and I have a better relationship. Because my wife and I have a better relationship, when I go to work, I'm in a happier mood. I'm in a better place. Now that's all come down from me doing some exercise. So those 3 core areas, health and fitness, psychological well-being, and family, are really important, and they will spill over and impact the other 3. Now, if you choose to work on any of the other 3, they will also impact the other 3. So if you start to pay more attention at work, okay, you start to really knuckle down at work, concentrate better, your career prospects will go up. As a result of that, your money was probably going to go up. Now that may take some stress and burden off the relationship with your husband or your wife or your kids, because money becomes less of a problem. So do you see what I'm saying here? All these areas have an impact on each other. But what it comes down to is identifying which one I should start on, and then ultimately being consistent. So consistency is key. So I always talk about being persistently consistent and consistently persistent in always trying to do something every day. So even if you were trying to train for a marathon, I was talking to a guy last night about training for a running race, and this guy's been doing 5 and 10Ks for, I don't know, maybe say the last 6 months, and he was talking about setting himself up. Would he be ready to do a marathon or a half marathon in February? I was like, are you kidding me? I thought he was going to tell me that the half marathon was in like November and he was struggling for time. I was like, he's already running 3 times a week. 3 times a week, he's making time to go out running. I was like, he'd already made that change in habit, made that change in routine, but was prepared to learn how to run properly. So I've helped him change his mindset and said, right, February, he's doing a half marathon. And then he was like, yeah, I might want to do a marathon in 2020. I was like, in 2020? I said, if you just ran a mile extra or half a mile extra or a quarter of a mile extra every week for the next year, he'd be at a marathon distance before he'd even got to the end of next year. So it's all about that mindset. It's all about making time for it. So what I want you guys to think about is I want you to say, right, where can I first of all find my 1%? Now, I'm a big advocate of finding it first thing in the morning. Do it first thing in the morning. Find your 14 minutes and 40 seconds first thing in the morning. Because if you're then chasing it for the rest of the day, then it's less likely to happen. As soon as you get it done in the morning, you are in a good place and you're going to be moving forward. You've got it done. You're in a good place. For example, yesterday I went out and I'd got some new boots and I just took a massive big Bergen with about, 40 kilograms of weight in it, put it on my back, and I went for a bit of a hilly walk near where I live. The weather was great. Now, had I not done it, it absolutely peed it down. Flash floods, like you weren't going outside at all last night. So had I not done it, I would not have got it done last night, because there was no way I was going out in that bad weather. Family was at home. I was having a good time with my wife and the kids. So I was not going to go out. So I did it first thing in the morning. So I'm saying to you, find your 1%, find it that time, that 14 minutes and 40 seconds. Do it first thing in the morning, okay? First thing in the morning. Pick an area that you're going to work in. So think of the big 6. Think of the big 6 areas: health and fitness, psychological well-being, family and community. Then it's your career, your wealth, and your self-awareness, self-actualization. Pick one of those areas, okay? And then, so you've got your time, you've got the area you're going to work on. Double down on it. Be as consistent as you possibly can. If you drop the ball one day, don't worry. Pick it up and roll with it again the next day. It's about how quickly you can pick it up, because the key to all of this is being consistent. Every day you're going to allocate some time to improving yourself, because remember, if you're not working on yourself or working in an area, you are essentially moving backwards, okay? Because the rest of the world is evolving, is improving, and is moving forward. So if you're not, you are essentially moving backwards, okay? So find your 1% in the day, find the area you're going to work on. Guys, get a journal, write this stuff down, record what you're doing. It's really important to be recording what you're doing, okay? Where's my starting point? Where do I want to be? Have a bit of in your mind about where you are now, where you want to be. This is some of the stuff I do with my clients. I've got a calculator as well, and I'll share the link with you, and you can score yourself out of 1,000 where you are now, where you want to be. And if you're not sure of the 3 areas, I will post this link in the bottom of this podcast and you can check it out. And it's just a little scoring system, and it will tell you where you are right now versus where you want to be. And it will give you that first step to say, right, these are my 3 areas. I'm going to pick one of these. But share this with the significant people in your life, okay? A little bit of accountability. If you need to share it with me, drop me a message. Send me a text, send me a WhatsApp message, send me a Facebook or a YouTube message, wherever you're listening to this. Find it, send it me, and I'll hold you accountable, okay? Because remember, life is one big game. Play it your way and maximize your potential. Guys, I've run out of time. We've got 4 seconds left. Guys, have an amazing day. See you all soon, okay? We've been doing this 14 minutes and 40 seconds. Done. Right, guys, that's it. I'm outie. Woohoo! YouTube. I always like to do a little bit on the end of the YouTube for the YouTube video. But I've not really got anything more for you to say for you today, apart from, no, I've not got anything. Guys, have an amazing weekend, all right? It's Friday, I'm at a wedding tomorrow. It's going to be fantastic. Guys, I hope you're all good, had a good week. Lots of cool stuff coming with myself and my brand, but lots of cool stuff coming with Potential Change as well, which is another business I'm part of. I'm looking forward now to these next 4 months, this last quarter of this year. Lots of cool stuff coming. I'm hoping you're finding this helpful and useful. If you are, subscribe, hit me up on Instagram, all the good stuff. It's going to be there. Guys, have an amazing day. I've got to stop this finger wiggle. Have an amazing day, all right? Remember, life is one big game. Make sure you play it your way and maximize your potential. Bye-bye. I feel like I OD'd on that one. Never mind.